right? It wasn't an act of God. There's nothing inevitable about people camping in public spaces. They do it because they're allowed to do it.
So this is 100% a political issue and nothing else. Welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about, does Chico have a homeless problem? I think it's one of the top things on most people's mind in Chico is the issue of homelessness. It's kind of a complicated situation, or as Tom likes to say, simple. And so I'm sitting here with Tom Van Overbeck of the Chico City Council. He's been on the front lines of homelessness for a long time now, many years. And we are going to discuss the topic of homelessness. So welcome, Tom, to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Brent. Always happy to be here.
Yes. Okay. So Chico has a long and storied history of homelessness, and so
not that long.
Not that long.
Yeah.
Okay. But going back, where do you feel like the homeless? Because I think you're right. I went to Chico State here, and I remember seeing an occasional homeless person
in the 90s, right?
Yeah. That was early 2000s for me.
Okay.
I graduated 2004.
My son went here in the 90s, and so I remember coming to visit him, and homelessness wasn't a visible problem.
It was not at all, really. And then it seems like when we got to the campfire, it seems like there was a big shift then, and then 2020 seemed to be a big shift with what was characterized as the Brown New Deal, where we opened the door to allow anyone to camp in Bidwell Park. Would you say that's kind of accurate of where?
No.
Okay.
So I think those were factors. So when the campfire happened, we had an influx of people, a lot of them who were low income. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of substandard housing up in Paradise. When that burned, those people came down the hill, but then they quickly dispersed to other lower cost places to live. So we had this bubble in the population, and then that normalized. And what the Brown New Deal did is forbid the police from moving homeless camps with the excuse that reason was just to let people camp wherever they wanted to, for reasons I still don't understand who benefits from that.
Yeah, and I think that's where Chico got a reputation for, I think the news went out far and wide that Chico had a major homeless problem.
Anywhere you want.
Yes.
Yeah, but the underlying causes for the high rate of homelessness in Chico and California and states that are governed like California are, in California, AB 109, which Jerry Brown signed in 2011, reduced the population of our jails and prisons by half. So if you go back and you Google prison population 2000 and what it is now, you'll find that it's half of what it was. And then in Prop 47 was passed a few years after that. And what that did is basically decriminalize hard drug use, as well as petty property crime, shoplifting, which is how people got the money to buy the drugs. So you take away the punishments and you let literally hundreds of thousands of people out of jail. And we shouldn't have been surprised by what happened. So 80% of the people, this was a survey from San Francisco, but I've asked local service providers if that tracks to their experience. 80% of the 3,000 homeless people interviewed in San Francisco had a history of incarceration. These are people who had been in jail. And in California, you got to do something really serious to be in jail, like use a plastic straw, something terrible,
Right. Okay, so
that's who you're dealing with.
Yes, and so the state laws, sounds like what you're saying, affect Chico in our little town of 100,000 people or whatever it is, or a small city. So then just historically tracking, so we had the Brand New Deal 2020, and I remember that time, Bidwell Park was just absolutely full of camping.
Great place to camp.
Great place to camp. I know. Amazing. But I remember feeling a little bit unsafe walking through there. There's, fires at night in the park, which was wild, dogs off the leash. I personally witnessed,
It's the dogs that concern me.
Yeah, and I had a pit bull off the leash barking at me with my kids and my wife walking in Bidwell Park. I had an experience like that, and it was like, there's got to be some rules here.
Yeah.
And so
there weren't.
Yeah, and that was evident. And we got to the place where me and my family, we lived by the park, and we would not go inside the park. And I think during that time, Chico kind of got a reputation. I think people saw like news articles and pictures and all kinds of stuff like that Chico has a homeless problem, major. And then politically, something happened. I believe this is 2022. 2020, where we went from a 5-2. I'm not trying to be political or whatever, but a 5-2 liberal.
Well, it's highly political.
Okay. Well, we went from a 5-2 liberal city council majority to a 6-1 conservative supermajority in one citywide election.
That's
correct?
Right. Well, there were a few things in between. We had a couple of council members resign because turns out they didn't live in the district that they said they lived in, which is a requirement of being on the city council. And then there were, at least there was one more conservative appointed. But we went from 5-2 liberal majority to 5-2 conservative majority, and then 6-1 conservative majority.
There seemed to be this major push, and it was almost overnight, at least what it felt like being a spectator, not really involved in the fight. I'm not on city council or anything, but it just seemed like all of a sudden, all the parks and everything was completely cleared out.
Yep.
And then a lawsuit arose from that.
Correct.
Okay, so talk us a little bit about that. And
so people were fed up, and they wanted a homeless situation dealt with. I mean, we had a lady who'd been on the council for 4 terms and been the mayor twice who got blown out. I mean, every single liberal candidate lost. Mm-hmm. Because people were fed up, and because that situation had been allowed to occur by those liberal councils.
Yes.
So the conservative council proceeded to do what they believed they were elected to do, which was to clean those camps out. Mm-hmm. And they were too aggressive about it, because the Boise versus Martin law went into place in 2018, which basically says if you're going to tell somebody they can't camp somewhere, they have to have somewhere to go.
Right, and we didn't have that.
And we didn't have the shelter.
So we broke the law,
Well, we got sued, and we ended up with something called the settlement agreement, which was signed in January of 2022 and lasts for 5 years. So January 27, we're out of that. And that applied a number that was very poorly drafted, and we've been living with the consequences for the last almost 4 years. And it means we can only clear 3 sites at a time. We have to give 17 days worth of notice. There are all sorts of rules around, what we can do. I mean, what people do when they were cleaning out the garage, is they go rent a trailer and then take it to the dump or to Salvation Army. Now they take the trailer to a homeless encampment and dump all their stuff there, right? So that's where all the couches. You wonder, how do these homeless people end up with 1,000 pounds worth of junk? Well, the answer is people just dump their stuff in those homeless camps, right? Once it's identified as somebody's property, then when they clear the camps, they have to store the property and catalog it and hold it for a certain amount of time until people come back for it. And it's been a terrible mess. So we've been working very hard to try, because it's legally flawed, to try to find a way to make it more manageable. Mm-hmm. And have not had any luck with that. So the reality is, until January, it's better now than it was then, the situation.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I agree.
But it's not where it needs to be.
Yeah. Okay, so and then from what I see, it seems like Bidwell Park is very clean. I'm in the park just about every day.
It ebbs and flows.
But
it's dramatically better than it was.
Yes, dramatically better. Downtown seems like it has a little more issues with the camping. There's a lot more camping, and there's certain hot spots, in various locations. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at now, is that there are, I feel like, hot spots of like camping and things like that, primarily centered around like downtown and the city core. Would you agree with that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the areas. Tiker Ponds is another one.
Yeah.
So, we have the ability to clear three sites at a time. We have to give 17-day notice before we can go pick the next 3. And so we just sort of rotate around and keep clearing these places out. But one of the flaws in the settlement agreement is that when you clear somebody out of a space, they can come right back the next day or or in the afternoon after they've been moved in the morning, and they do.
Okay. And so it seems like, so now because of the settlement agreement, we do have a large pallet shelter that has 3 meals a day, air-conditioned living spaces.
177 units, each of which has 2 beds.
2 beds, air conditioning, 3 meals a day, heating, showers. I mean, everything, much better than basically living on the streets. And then we have the tourist shelter, and then we have the Jesus shelter as probably 2 other main places where people can go.
Jesus Center is a different model. So the Jesus Center, they changed their model about 5 years ago, and they came to the conclusion, which is common sense, that you can't help people who aren't willing to help themselves.
Okay.
So before you get accepted to the Jesus Center, you have to commit to get your life back, to get some skills, to get a job, to get training, to get a job.
Be sober, probably.
Be sober. And they've been very successful with that. And they operate the Genesis shelter. The Genesis shelter is a low barrier shelter, so there's lower level of rules there, but their charter is different than Taurus, which is basically a soup kitchen with a bunk bed.
Okay. And so right now, the basically the political idea in large over Chico is we have the settlement agreement, so you can't tell people they have to go to the pallet shelter or the tourist shelter. You can't force them to go there.
That's right. They can refuse to go.
They can refuse to go, and then they can go camp at another location, come back the next day. So it kind of has this, what I've heard of is the whack-a-mole, where like basically, you move someone one day, they go up over here. 17 days later, you move them from there over here, and it's just this kind of like, they don't want to go to. They're not interested in maybe, going to the Jesus Center or the tourist shelter or the pallet shelter or getting their life together or whatever, becoming a productive member of society, whatever the case may be. They want to live on the streets. They want to camp. They want to be full-time campers. And there's basically nothing the city can essentially legally
not until January of 27.
Okay, so in January, so let's talk about the future now. So, and all this is contingent upon the political will of Chico. Is this correct? Like
100%.
Yeah. So how goes the city council? How goes basically the issue of homelessness and what is allowed and what is tolerated and what is basically like promoted in Chico? Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, but I mean even Gavin Newsom, who desperately wants to be president because he's timing out as governor, has said he wants the homeless camps cleared. Right now, this is a big change from policy earlier, but I don't know who benefits from people camped in our public spaces. They die at 5 times the rate of the rest of the population, and they died at an average age of 49, usually of drug overdoses. But you can imagine all the health issues from sleeping in a tent and dirty bedding and all that. And it's a disaster for the community. It destroys the quality of our civic life. Your ability to take your kids to the park or people's willingness to come downtown. So, but, we all live in a society. You and I live in a society, and we have rules that we have to obey. And that applies to the homeless people. They're not a protected class. And so this idea that we're going to let people camp wherever they want to because they don't decide they want to go to the shelter, at least my position on January 27 is no. If there's shelter space for you, you must go there. And the third time you get cited for camping, you go to jail. But we cannot allow it. It's a disaster. And that's why we have 5 times the rate of homelessness of Texas. Right now, California has approximately 50 homeless people per 10,000 population, and Texas has less than 10. And Florida and the other states and by the way, the rest of the world, but at least the Western Europe, is run the same way. They have places for these people to go, but they have to go there. They're not allowed to disrupt civic life. So that's what we need to get back to.
Okay, so it sounds like, and do you...
In my opinion.
In your opinion, you're one guy, but you are a city council member, so
am.
you do have the ability to vote on these types of issues. Would you say the city council is, in large part, at this time, more sympathetic with your view, where come January 2027, we have places for you to go, and you cannot camp in these civic centers? You have
Can't camp anywhere, and that includes so-called managed campgrounds, which are not well managed. So your first question is, do my views represent the rest of the council? And I've stopped predicting what the council's going to do, because you got 7 individuals, and depending on how their morning went, you don't know what they're going to do. But I would say that some version of, if we continue to have a conservative majority, which I expect us to have after the 26th election, that some version of what I just articulated is what's going to happen.
Okay, so what happens at Chico in terms of homelessness is largely determined on what happens at the next election, which is November 2026.
100%. I mean, if we get, there's 3 seats that are up, mine, Addison Winslow, who's a progressive, and the mayor, Casey Reynolds. And if either Casey or I lose, it's inconceivable that I would lose.
Okay. Love the confidence.
No, I mean, anybody can, anybody can lose, right? There's no such thing as a 100% sure seat.
Yeah.
But I'm reasonably confident I'm going to win, and I'm confident that the mayor's going to win. So what that'll mean is there won't be a change. But we have a 4-3 conservative majority now. Remember, it was 5-2 and even 6-1 at one point. So we lose 1 seat, and we're done. I mean, then we're back to the settlement agreement being a permanent part of our life. Okay. And homeless people camp wherever they decide they want to camp.
Yeah. So it seems, and without making a straw man, it seems like, and it is political, right? So the liberal side would like to see the unhoused population, the homeless population, kind of intertwined in anywhere where they really want to be.
Right. Well, but that's how reason we have this situation in states like California is because this was liberal policy. These were policy decisions, right? It wasn't an act of God. There's nothing inevitable about people camping in public spaces. They do it because they're allowed to do it.
So this is 100% a political issue and nothing else.
It's largely a political issue. We're the richest country in the world. But policy is driven all this. Policy has allowed it to happen, and policy in California is also why we have the highest rents in the country. And high rents are also correlated with high rates of homelessness. It's very expensive to rent an apartment anywhere in California.
So in summary, it looks like, Chico is better than it used to be.
Yeah.
And I'll testify to that. There was a time where I did not want, I'm a real estate agent, and there was a time where, by the way, if you're trying to sell a house, no, I'm just kidding. But if, there was a time, if there was a house that came up near the park, I literally would have people say, I will never live next to the park because of all the issues with homelessness.
But that's a buying opportunity for people that want to live near the park, because they're going to be out of there after January. Even some of the liberals have said, it doesn't benefit anybody to have people camped in the park.
Yeah. Okay, but that wasn't always the case, and that wasn't always the mentality.
No, that's right.
I very remember a time where it was a lot of people thought it was a great idea to have all the homeless within the park. I remember one of the council members proposing a homeless encampment in Bidwell Park right next to Parkview Elementary School. Like the homeless people who are, you said 80%, incarcerated. They have.
Well, they have these ideas. They have this Pollyannish idea that they're just regular people who just something lightning struck them one day and they're homeless. No, these are people who have been incarcerated. They've made some very bad choices as it relates to drugs, and a lot of them are mentally ill as a result of the drugs, and the new drugs are making people zombies. That doesn't mean they're not human beings and that we shouldn't have compassion, but compassion is not letting somebody die in a tent, right? I mean, it's helping them get their life back, whether they want to or not.
Yeah. What do you say to the other side? I'm just curious because it's a political issue that says, the right, the conservative, ideals of homelessness. You cannot camp in civic places. You have to go to a pallet shelter. Is inhumane or unsensitive or uncompassionate. What do you say to that?
But that's this complete Orwellian language. So who's more compassionate? California, which has half the unhoused homeless in the country, or Texas, which has seen their homeless rate go down, and whereas ours keeps increasing. So the problem with the left is they don't care about the welfare and the quality of civic life and the welfare of the rest of the community, and that's clear by their policies. And so, the idea that somehow it's compassionate to just let people camp in Bidwell Park and have their dogs run wild and have them die of drug overdoses, and in the meantime deprive the rest of the community of the use of that beautiful resource, or the downtown. Let's say you came from out of town, you drove down Main Street, and you saw the homeless camped in the plaza, you'd say, Johnny, you're going, sorry, we're going to take a look at San Jose State because this isn't the place I want to send you.
Yeah.
Right? And that happened a lot, which is why the enrollment went down. This used to be one of the most popular campuses.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the enrollment, I hear, is going back up.
It's coming back up slowly. I mean, there were some terribly mismanaged COVID policies during COVID. There were a whole bunch of reasons why. Yeah. And now we have a terrific new president who's doing the right things, and it's coming back.
So where do you see Chico going? If you could look into a crystal ball, where all our crystal balls are broken, let's say 26, 27, 28, where do you see Chico going in terms of its position on homelessness and its, just basically stance on homelessness in a political sense?
Well, I'm going to stick my neck out and say that we're going to get to a place where basically every country in Western Europe and most of the rest of the United States outside of the Ninth Circuit, which is the federal court that has jurisdiction for us, which is there's a place for these people to go, but they have to go there. And no, you can't steal things, and no, you can't use hard drugs. You will be punished if you do those things. So remember, this is like being a parent. Like these are the lowest functioning people in the society, right? I mean, your ability to adapt to your environment is on a bell curve. So you got some people that do great, like you, and you got a bunch of people in the middle who get by, they do okay. And then you get some people who just somehow they can't quite get it together. The state of California doesn't know where it went, and in the meantime, over that 5-year period of time, homelessness increased 40% in California. Mm-hmm. It compounded the problem.
Okay, so it seems like what you're saying is where you see Chico specifically going 26, 27, 28 is more towards a law and order, cleanliness, safety of civic places, more of a kind of emphasis on the civic experience for most people, and basically, mandating that homeless people cannot camp in public places.
Yeah, law and order has sort of a connotation. I think it goes back to the Nixon years, a negative connotation.
Okay.
My view is real simple. The most vulnerable people in this society, which means old people and little kids, should be able to go anywhere in this town, ride their bike in the park and go downtown, and you shouldn't have to worry about your parents or your children riding their bike in the park by themselves or with their friends, having to encounter some crazy guy with a machete or a pit bull that's not on a leash, right? That's my view of where we need to be. And that's, there's nothing new or original about this idea. And that's why I ran for city council. I mean, and my test is, can your young child ride their bike in the park and you don't worry about it. So when I was a kid, I was 10 years old, I'd take off on my bike and, go over to my buddy's house, and then we'd ride all over the place. And my mom would say, dinner's at 5:30 and be here or you won't get dinner.
Yeah.
And I was always there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great days. Okay, so and include, that's where you feel.
There's no reason we can't go back to that, but we have to have the will to do it. Back to your comment about political will. I think everybody, most people in Chico are compassionate, right? We're dealing with human beings. But if you had a child who was 16 and did crazy stuff in a car, you'd take the car away. And if you didn't, you'd be irresponsible. And as citizens, we have some people like that who are our homeless population, and giving them the keys to the car is irresponsible. And that's what we've done. And that's why we're in this situation. Mm-hmm. And why we're going to, but I think people have recognized that, and we're going to get out of it. We are getting out of it.
Yeah. Slowly and surely. And the next big date is January 1st, 2027.
I don't know if I forget what day in January. I think it's the third week in January.
Okay. January 2027
yeah.
is a big date where there will be a different approach, or allowed even.
Well, that's when we will be able to reconsider our approach to homelessness as a city. We won't be constrained by this settlement agreement.
Okay, so in the city of Chico right now, we have the homeless shelters, which is Torres and Jesus Shelter.
And they do a great job.
And they do a fantastic job. Jesus Center is sober living. You have to make a commitment. Torres Shelter is a little more low barrier. Then we have the pallet shelter, but then we have these campgrounds. Now, talk about the campgrounds and your experience with the.
Well, we have one place called the alternate site, mm-hmm. which is at the corner of Eaton and Cohasset.
Yeah.
And it's been a complete disaster, in part because it hasn't been managed. We were restricted in what we could do to manage it by the settlement agreement, back to the settlement agreement.
Yeah.
The city has since stepped in and done some more things to actively manage it. We had a bunch of people there that weren't approved to be there and caused a lot of problems. We had a shooting out there, gunfight. I mean, crazy stuff, right? But campgrounds are, whether they're so-called managed campgrounds or not, are a bad idea. There's a group in town that's trying to put tiny houses in church parking lots, which is a ridiculous idea. Right now, we have tiny houses at the pallet shelter, 30 of them. I talked to Amber yesterday. 30 of them are vacant right now. They have a fence around it, and they have security, right? So why would you go to a church parking lot with half a dozen tiny little houses with no security and think that was a better situation?
Yeah.
So that's a really bad idea.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned Amber Bass, Jesus Center, probably foremost expert on homelessness in Chico, I would say. And, she was talking about, you're mentioning earlier about her views on campgrounds. I thought that was particularly powerful. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So Amber is a person who is deeply experienced, deeply compassionate. I mean, really compassionate. I don't mean she's not doing this to feel good about herself. She's doing it because she really wants to help people, and deeply thoughtful, very nuanced. I mean, if you want to learn about homelessness, the podcast she did with Sheriff Honey, which is up on his website, it's called Open Mic with the Sheriff or something like that, is really excellent. But for a while, I thought a managed campground might be a reasonable way to kind of get all these campers gathered up, put them in one place, and that might be an answer. And so one day I was having a cup of coffee with her, and I said, "What do you think about that?" And she said, "No. When you allow somebody to camp, it means you've given up on them, because they're ultimately going to die in that camp. And as a Christian, I refuse to give up on these people. I believe my calling is to help these people get their lives back." And that I've found that very powerful. And very moving. And I'm Dutch and I'm old, and so my mind isn't easily changed, but she completely changed my mind on that. Wow. And she's right. So our goal shouldn't be just to warehouse these people, but to provide them when they go to the shelter. That's a transitional experience to get stabilized, get sober, get training, get their life back. Yeah. So I'm opposed to campgrounds, sanctioned or otherwise. once the settlement agreement expires January 27, I'm going to be in favor of closing down the alternate site. Right now there are 18 people at the alternate site, and I believe 8 of them have been approved for the shelter, have been assessed for, and I don't know whether the other 10, what the status of them being assessed is, but roughly half of them can go to the shelter, but they refuse to go for a variety of reasons. And my concern is the welfare of the community first, and the welfare of what those people want or don't want second. So the idea of, beggars can't be choosers. If you can't camp. So if you don't want to go to the shelter, then you need to try your luck in Redding.
Wow.
Which is not going to be a better experience than Chico.
Okay.
I mean, they have people up there even more conservative than me.
That's hard to believe. All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for stopping by.
Always a pleasure,
How
Brent.
can people find you if they want to hear more about you, or,
Well, I'm running for re-election, Brent. It's your way. My website is, if you just Google Tom Van Overbeck, Chico City Council, you'll see my Facebook page. And I'm posting things up there regularly so people can keep in touch.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.